The Lich returns in whispers. A Lich Mo whispering in the dream sequence of the episode Orb makes a lot more sense now. But I'm jumping way ahead. Let's rewind and dissect the episode chronologically, starting with Fern's continued identity crisis. Before he took on his new name, Graspin was already unsure of his place in the world and what kind of life he's supposed to live. While he tried to individualize himself and carve out his own path as Fern the human, he has been having a spree of dinking things up, with the most severe case being his failure to protect U while Finn was away discovering his heritage. To make matters even worse, Fern remembers his existence as fun, which also probably confirms that all the people who were elementified remember the actions they performed during elements. Knowing this, I can definitely see a Princess Bubblegum episode in the future where she has to deal with her own guilt. She was already anxious about her powers when relying on them caused great harm to her citizens, to the point where they became scared of her yet again. Now there's even more reason for her to be troubled by her candy elemental powers, as she almost took over the world with them. Bonnie isn't even in this episode though, so let's get back to talking about Fern. It's bad feeling like you failed to protect what you were entrusted with. It's even worse remembering yucking around while the person who entrusted you with a task had to return and fix your screw-ups. At least that's certainly how Fern sees the situation. While it's all based on circumstance, if Finn was at the treehouse at the time of Patience's spell, I wager he would also have become candified. Fern can't help but feel responsible and guilty for the whole ordeal. It makes a lot of sense for Fern to be so upset, and for tiny irrelevant things like not getting lucky at fishing to push his festering feelings over the edge. If we recall the episode Cloudy, Finn felt a great deal of guilt and remorse for simply having selfish thoughts.
Did I secretly want that to happen? Like, deep down inside, was I afraid Fern would be better than me? And my lizard brain put out bad vibes?
Fern, on the flip side of the situation, feels like he has a confirmation that Finn is better than him. Fern has to deal with the constant festering thoughts about how he falls short relative to Finn, how he can't measure up to the real hero of U when it comes to anything, from protecting the land to fishing. Finn tries his best to reassure Fern that everything is okay and tries to use an example from his own life experience, but his attempt falls a little short as Fern already has Finn's memories. While the two have the same memories, though Fern's mind is fuzzy on some things, I get the indication that Fern doesn't internalize these memories in the same manner Finn does. For Finn, the culmination of these memories constitute who he is, while Fern feels removed from these memories, as if they're a separate bank of knowledge that's somewhat external to Fern's own sense of self. Fern recalls and processes those memories as Finn's memories, not his own. That's how I interpret Fern's character, at least. While Fern can easily slay enemies, he's still unsure how to properly deal with situations that require restraint.
Okay, Fern, what do you think we should do next?
Sever his tendons?
And while Finn was originally trying to help Fern figure out how to handle things Fern's way, Finn ends up having to take the reins yet again when it comes to calming Sweet Pea down. Fern helps out, but doesn't feel good about it because he just copied Finn's actions from before, making him feel like he's still just a bad copycat rather than his own individual. The dialogue in this episode was just great, by the way, both when the characters are having serious ruminations, as well as when they're being comedic.
What up, Buttercup? Why you run, pork bun?
The monster!
Was it LSP?
So other than Fern's insecurities, Sweet Pea's identity as the Lich was the other main topic of the episode, and I really enjoyed all the developments.
I only have one dream anymore.
Deliciously ominous. Fern tries to help out yet again by reminding everyone how dangerous bogs at night can be, but his delivery isn't the most comforting, which causes Finn to get upset at him, adding yet another point to the Fern screw-up score.
Your body will be preserved for thousands of years. No one will ever find you.
Fern!
You want me to knock him out?
Not this time.
Finn's patience growing thin visibly shows on his face as Fern continues to try and do things Fern's way. In the night, Finn manages to sleep contently and has pleasant dreams.
Punch, punch. Kiss, kiss.
Meanwhile, Fern sleeps poorly and likely has unpleasant dreams that cause him to grind his teeth in his sleep. After ruining a fox's week with accusations of scuttling, the two find out what's been whispering evil things to Sweet Pea in the night. Finn comedically recalls the exact moment the Lich hand crossed over into the land of Oo.
It must have been the day that Bimo found that little sailor hat.
Fern actually holds the Lich hand down rather than trying to dispose of it with his grass blades, which I would find rather odd for him, especially since he knows what the creature is. But ever since Sweet Pea burst out from the forest, Finn has been scolding Fern for the way he tries to solve problems, so it does make sense for Fern to feel uneasy about taking charge of the situation without Finn's direct approval. The Lich making a hand mouth was rather silly, but I still liked it. Since it came from the Jake Lich of Farmworld though, I would think it should also have shapeshifting powers and be able to simply transform itself into having a mouth. But for whatever reason, this power wasn't utilized. I guess the hand lacks this power simply because it's separated from the main body, though I'm not sure what specific magical mechanics are at work for that to be the case. While Fern is about to have an anxiety attack about his spree of screw-ups, about letting the Lich Hand get away, Finn puts his trust in him to look after Sweet Pea, and on a far more darker note, Finn gave Fern the responsibility of having to take out Sweet Pea if he ends up transforming into a second Lich.
There's already one Lich loose in Oo. If Sweet Pea turns EVIL tonight, there might be a second. I need you here.
Maybe Finn delegated in the manner he did, because if Sweet Pea went full-on Lich, Fern would be better suited for combat against it, since he has the Grass Sword abilities. However, perhaps subconsciously, Finn is worried that he wouldn't be able to fight, and potentially even have to kill Sweet Pea if the worst-case scenario occurred. So he chose to leave the task to Fern. The scene is rather open to interpretation, but my mind immediately jumped to the darkest route. I like my interpretation because it highlights just how dire the whole situation is, and how horrible everything could have potentially turned out. So Finn gives chase as the Lich Hand tries to return to the Well of Power, and wow, Finn has gotten way better at parkour compared to the skills he had in the 4th season.
Hi-ya! Yeah!
Ron Perlman's beautiful evil voice is always so delicious to listen to, and I absolutely adore every Lich monologue he performs.
I know exactly what I am. I am the ceaseless wheel, the last scholar of Golb. I am your doom.
The last scholar of Golb. What does that mean? Does name-dropping Golb this close to the end mean that Golb might just be the final antagonist to the series? The biggest boss of all bosses that removes things from existence in a manner even Prismo can't restore? I really want to find out more about Golb. Sweet Pea manages to get away from Fern and makes the greatest entrance I've ever seen.
I too am doom.
Sweet Pea asserts his own autonomy and sense of self and chooses to be good, to be a hero who vanquishes the other Lich. At the start of the episode, I hardly expected for Sweet Pea to take on the hero role and save the day, but boy do I find that awesome. Looks like Oo might just have a new rising hero on the horizon, especially since Finn claims Sweet Pea is a natural at the profession. On the way back to the unconscious Fern, Finn gives some life lessons and life experience to Sweet Pea.
Yeah, I met my bio dad once too. He wasn't evil incarnate, but he was kind of a crummy dude. TT and Mr. P love you. That's all that matters.
Looks like Sweet Pea will defy his legacy. Evil Incarnate has become a sweet warrior who will protect the world from evil. Quite the turn of events. Meanwhile, the second Finn falls victim to the evil side as his insecurities become too much to handle, and he acquires the vile idea to take the place of the real Finn to be the only Finn. Seeing the manifestation of Finn inside Fern was quite creepy. Finn looked like a marionette being controlled by the emissary from beyond, and I assume this grass octopus spider thing is indeed influencing Fern's thoughts. It's a very ominous setup for the next episode. I am a little confused as to how Fern is able to transform his grassy exterior to look like regular Finn, but I'll discuss that more in my upcoming review of 3 Buckets. All in all, I had an absolute blast with Whispers. The character struggles, dialogue, comedy, and intrigue were all on point. If Sweet Pea manages to keep the Lich inside him under control, this might just be the last time we hear Ron Perlman's dulcet tones, but the prospect of Golb showing up in the future has me really psyched. Let me know your thoughts on Whispers, and I'll see y'all next time.